Coming up next on KPBS Evening Edition, police say they've arrested a person of interest in yesterday's string of freeway shootings.
San Diego civic leaders give the coats off their backs to help the homeless.
And the Occupy Wall Street movement is heading here.
KPBS Evening Edition starts now.
Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm Joanne Farian.
And I'm Dwayne Brown. 1 out of 4 adults suffer from mental health problems like depression. Tonight, we'll show you what San Diego County is doing about it.
And a special investigation into substandard housing, a family living with rats, roaches, and mold, and no one can do anything about it because of bureaucracy and budget problems. But first, tonight's top stories. The California Highway Patrol has detained a person of interest in connection with a series of shootings on San Diego freeways. The man was taken into custody in Los Angeles this morning. The CHP says he was driving a car with the same license plate as the one wanted for those shootings. That car is registered to a man named Enrique Aon from Lancaster. Police have not confirmed that Aon is the man in custody. However, the search for the gunman began yesterday after a spate of shootings along the 805 and 5 freeways. The CHP says there were 4 incidents, first in National City, then in San Diego and Del Mar. 1 person was hurt and stretches of the freeways were shut down so officers could investigate. The CHP says that investigation is still underway.
SDG&E's construction helicopters are flying again. They were grounded late last month because of safety concerns. These air crane helicopters are working on the Sunrise Power Link in the Imperial Valley. The State Public Utilities Commission halted their work because of 8 reports of dangerous incidents involving the choppers. The agency says SDG&E has agreed to make safety, training, and reporting improvements.
A new report says it costs more than ever for San Diego families to be self-sufficient. The report comes from the Insight Center for Community Economic Development and National Research Group. It says it costs a family of 3 nearly $63,000 to be self-sufficient in this county. That's more than 150 hours per week at minimum wage. The researchers say there have been big increases in taxes, healthcare costs, and child care expenses. This report is more severe than numbers released by the U.S. Census Bureau. Advocates for the working poor say this picture is more accurate.
The standard used in looking at in the census data is the federal poverty level, which is a woefully inadequate measure of the need for a high-cost region like San Diego County.
Crawford says more than 1 million San Diegans are living in homes earning less than Insight's threshold. The report is available online at insightcced.org.
San Diego city leaders were giving the coats off their backs to help the homeless today. They're encouraging everyone to help out with the annual project Homeless Connect in January. Organizers are looking for donations of clothing, money, and time. 400 volunteers are needed to run the event.
Project Homeless Connect reaches out to those in need, providing everything from gently used clothing, which is what we're helping with today, to toiletries, to services such as haircuts, health screenings, and, of course, legal services. At
Last year, the one-day project served 660 homeless men and women, but ran out of many items, including blankets and coats.
The San Diego City Council today delved into the dicey issue of whether to build a new city hall. It's a project that seems to surface periodically. And joining us now is KPBS Metro reporter Katie Orr to tell us why Council was talking about it today. Katie, where does the project stand now?
Joanne, the project has been stalled for a while now. Last fall, voters were supposed to decide whether they wanted a new city hall, but supporters of the measure pulled it from the ballot after they thought it was going to fail, and we really haven't seen much progress since then.
So why now? Why was the council taking this up?
Today, the council was responding to a county grand jury report on a proposed new city hall. The council is legally obligated to respond to those grand jury reports. So they didn't take any action today, but it gave council members a chance to state where they stand on the project. And their opinions range from building a new city hall to leasing out more office space around town for city workers.
Katie, how much would a new city hall cost?
Joanne, the current proposal would cost about $300 million.
KPBS reporter Katie Orr.
Many people suffering from depression suffer in silence. That's why the San Diego Public Health Agency and its partners are offering free screenings at 24 sites around the county this week. I visited one of them in the North County. Good mental health is the subject of the day here at the EMAS Community Center in Escondido. Organizers say gathering in peer groups like this helps relieve the stigma of screening for depression. The county health agency says 1 out of 4 adults suffer from some sort of mental disorder, and the screening for depression should be routine, like checking your blood pressure. Holly Salazar is with CHIP, or Community Health Improvement Partners.
You take first a 9-question patient health questionnaire. It's called a PHQ-9. And the PHQ-9 asks simple questions like, how often do you feel sad? Are you anxious or restless? Do you sleep too much or sleep too little? And that question will rate you on a depression scale to determine whether or not you're at risk for depression. And then there are clinicians on site at the screening sites, and that clinician can then refer somebody who's at risk for depression to an appropriate resource.
I will, because I'm very eager to know what is bothering me, or if there is, or how to get over with all of this problem or whatever I have.
For a list of screening sites, you can call the county's 24-hour access and crisis line. That number is 800-479-3339. San Diego State University will be the first college on the West Coast to offer a degree in lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender studies. It will begin accepting students next spring. The program's advisor says a minor or major in LGBT studies can help students get into medical school, law school, or even the corporate sector because it gives students an understanding of diversity.
San Diegans are planning a protest similar to the one taking place in New York City. We'll talk with one of the organizers and a finance professor in a moment. But first, here's the setup. For more than 2 weeks, protesters have occupied a park in the financial district in New York City. They describe themselves as a sort of resistance movement, protesting corporate greed. Police have made hundreds of arrests, but that hasn't stopped demonstrators. They say they plan to occupy the area indefinitely. The protest has moved to other cities, including L.A., and now plans for San Diego. Joining me to discuss the planned protests here in San Diego is Callie Catt with Occupy San Diego, and to look at the economic issue, finance professor Dan Seaver with SDSU. Thank you both for being here. Callie, I want to start with you. Now, the protests in New York really began as a protest against corporate greed. What will people be protesting here in San Diego?
I think you can expect a similar thing. We are definitely standing in solidarity with the protesters on Wall Street, and I think that's how this group formed, was people who were just glued to their internet, watching the live stream, watching the tweets fly out about it, and wanting to be involved, maybe not able to get to New York. So we've started this here, so we can do something here.
So is it more about wanting to be part of the big protest in New York, or is it something specific to San Diego and our economy that protesters feel strongly about?
Well, we're definitely, once we get on the ground in the occupation, going to be looking at local issues, because that's probably what's most important to people who are going to be coming to our occupation, since we are in San Diego and we're going to have San Diego citizens there. But that being said, we're in close communication with the protesters on Wall Street, and we are paying attention to all the media that they're putting out from their occupation, and we watch their minutes that they put up from the meetings that they have. So we are trying to stay aligned with each other.
Dr. Seaver, do protests like this achieve anything, or is this a way to vent?
I think the different protests are different, and some can have achieve important objectives. But I think this is more venting, and I would think it still lacks a certain amount of focus. As I said on the radio, you can't lie down in front of a collateralized mortgage obligation, and it's what they're protesting is much more intangible, and that I think makes any protest more difficult to achieve its objective.
Though, could politicians sort of take notice that you have this very public show of frustration? Could it perhaps encourage Congress to work together?
Well, I don't know whether it would encourage them to work together. I mean, protests recently, the Tea Party is the best example of that. They seem to have at least partially taken over the Republican Party, and that was a protest movement that sprang out of the same kind of anger that I think the Occupy Wall Street protesters are feeling. And so that was successful to some degree, I think, in that case.
Do you see that kind of organization with Occupy San Diego or Occupy Wall Street or Occupy LA?
I suppose if it got big enough, it might have, it could potentially have some of the same impact, but it has to be, as I said before, it would need to be focused. I mean, there's something special about a woman who says, I'm going to sit in the front of the bus, or I'm going to sit at this lunch counter, that can have a dramatic impact on American society.
Kelly, tell us a little bit about the event that you have planned, where it begins, and how many people you actually expect to show up.
We can't, it's hard to say how many people are going to show up. We're not sending out like invitations and taking RSVPs, but in LA this weekend they started their occupation on Saturday. The planning structure was very similar to what we're doing down here in San Diego, and they had about 1,000 people at their march and about 300 to 350 spending the night on the lawn in front of the Los Angeles City Hall. They're still there. I was watching their live stream this morning. There's a handful of them left holding the space. So I would expect probably similar numbers, if not more.
Where will you be? Where does the protest begin?
We're going to march from Children's Park to the Civic Center. The march from Children's Park will start at 4. Children's Park is at East Harbor Avenue and East Harbor Drive and First Avenue, across from the Convention Center trolley station stop. So yeah, we're going to march to that. And I'm sure we'll have more people marching than actually occupying, but we're definitely encouraging everybody who can to come occupy. We have a lot of students, a lot of people who are unemployed, a lot of people who have lost their homes, who are willing to come occupy with us. And we're going to build a community on the ground, hopefully similar to what Wall Street has done, where they're feeding people. They have a bedding station set up. They have a food station set up. They have a medical station set up. And if anybody can help, and they have a media station set up. If anybody can help with like power supplies or anything like that, they can email occupysd@gmail.com, because we definitely need help.
Dr. Seaver, just before we go, we just have 30 seconds left, but I want to touch on Federal Reserve Chair Ben Bernanke spoke today. Sort of said more needed to be done quickly. If you can tell us a little bit about what he's referring to when he talks about more.
Sure. Well, the problem is monetary policy has done almost all it can do to try and get the economy growing again. And it probably prevented a Great Depression. But the economy is still very sick, and it's tipping toward another recession. And I think what Ben is saying, that there's not much more the Fed can do. It actually would probably be fiscal policy, more spending maybe, and maybe some reductions in taxes, employment taxes and so on, to help stimulate the economy so we can get some of these people, get them jobs.
Dr. Seaver, Kelly Catt, thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
As winter approaches, some San Diegans are living in substandard housing. No heat and infested with rats and roaches. Public agencies in charge of fixing these problems have been cut back. In a moment, a special investigation. And could your home use an energy audit? It could save you some money.
Tonight on KPBS at 8, it's the conclusion of Ken Burns' Prohibition as support for Prohibition diminishes. And in December of 1933, America takes its first legal drink in 13 years. Then at 10, it's an encore of the conclusion of Ken Burns' Prohibition, which ends with the passing of the 21st Amendment to the Constitution. And at midnight, acclaimed interviewer and broadcast journalist Charlie Rose engages America's best thinkers. That's all tonight on KPBS. Wednesday, KPBS goes to the dogs with a night of exploring the remarkable bond between dog and man. At 8, a 2-part Nature delves into the rise of the dog in human society and how man designed dogs to meet our specific needs. At 10, Nova reveals the science behind the unique relationship we share with our furry friends. Then, Through the Dog's Eyes follows the emotional journey of those with disabilities as they're matched with the perfect canine companion. Wednesday, October 12th on KPBS. KPBS Evening Edition is made possible by Joan and Irwin Jacobs and by
we've heard a lot about budget cutting to City of San Diego services and how those cuts could affect our quality of life. Now, we bring you a story about how those cuts can hurt at home. A single mother living in a rented City Heights apartment with her teenage son reports problems with rats, roaches, and mold. But an investigation by Speak City Heights, a media collaborative, reveals the woman has few options. Agencies that are supposed to help with substandard housing have been cut back or consolidated. Now here's a look at Graciela Ramirez's apartment.
El baño está bien estrellado, los azulejos, el zinc tira agua y pues...
The bathroom tile is broken, the sink drips water. Nothing works anymore. The wood is rotting away. Everybody here has cockroaches. I've been the only one here who's asked for fumigation. Somebody broke my window and we had really cold nights. Frequently we catch colds and flus. We get constantly sick because of the cold apartment.
Joining me to talk more about substandard housing in San Diego is Speak City Heights reporter and web editor Megan Burks and Mary Scott Knoll, executive director of the nonprofit Fair Housing Council of San Diego. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Megan, most people watching that video would probably be saying right now, why doesn't she just move?
Well, I first want to say that Graciela Ramirez isn't her real name. She was afraid that if we used her real name that her landlord would find out and evict her. And that's exactly why she hasn't moved yet. She is extremely low income and undocumented. And to be evicted means moving costs, paying a deposit somewhere else, and finding cheaper rent that she just doesn't think exists. And so she would much rather work with her current landlord and try to get the repairs made than just up and leave. And she also told me that she's lived here for 12 years. She watched her son grow up there, and she would much rather stay in the place where her family has grown up.
How much does she pay in rent every month?
This is a one-bedroom apartment in City Heights that's shared with her, her son, a puppy, and 2 adult roommates. And for the living room, her and her son pay $400 plus utilities.
And this is not government housing, Section 8 housing. This is a regular rental.
Right.
And she doesn't qualify because she's undocumented for Section 8 housing?
Yeah, and the wait list for Section 8 housing is 8 to 10 years according to the Housing Commission's website. So even trying to sign up for that if she were documented would be hard.
Now, Mary, do you see examples like this? This is one woman's story, but in terms of the low to moderate income group of people living in San Diego, do you see examples like this?
Well, over the years, for the same reason that she's talked about, we do. We see them in a different context, however, because when people call us, they generally have heard the word housing, and we are the Fair Housing Council that is set up to deal with housing discrimination. But just as has been talked about, we try to find ways to help people who have that problem. And a fair amount of the time that people call us, they do call about repairs and failure to make those, respond to those repairs by owners. It would become a fair housing issue if we could determine that that was purposeful or based upon a protected class status, like a person's national origin. But until then, we would have to make a referral based on a landlord-tenant problem and the remedies that exist under contractual law of the landlord-tenant laws of California.
Let's talk a little bit about remedies. Now, Megan, your story also looked into what is available to people in this situation. When it comes to city codes, what does she have an avenue out of this?
You can call neighborhood code compliance at the city to have some substandard housing conditions remediated. They help with everything from noisy neighbors to, a lack of a smoke detector. But for certain things, and in particular the things that are affecting Graciela the most, are infestations of rodents and insects and also mold. The city doesn't have jurisdiction over that. For infestations, they refer you to the county department, and the county will tell you that they can't take complaints from city residents. In terms of mold, no local municipality enforces that because the state and federal governments haven't set up any regulations for how to regulate molds.
So, Mary, what does a person do in the end? If you've got an example where, first of all, would you say this is an issue of fair housing?
At first glance, I would not. Without further investigation as to the things that I talked about before, at first glance, I would say it is a very bad landlord-tenant problem with the failures to repair. And with that, there are remedies under California's law, which are dangerous for tenants, especially when they are uninformed, to proceed under. I would ask a person to look at the withhold of rent and the repair and deduct remedy under California's law, but with extreme caution, because, and without, with the benefit of someone who is seasoned, like the Legal Aid Society, before you would undertake those remedies. So they're there, but it's very dangerous to use them because typically they will lend themselves to having the owner evict. If you have an owner who's so inclined.
Megan, quickly before we go, what's happening now with Crasilia?
She is working with a legal aid society, and they have sent a letter to the landlord asking for the landlord to make the repairs. I spoke with her last Friday. That was the deadline that they had set for the repairs, and they hadn't been made, and in fact her landlord asked her to leave immediately. She told me that she wanted to keep fighting and that she was going to call up her attorney and try to keep working at it.
Okay, thank you both for being here.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
With rising utility bills, many folks are looking for ways to save energy and money. Tonight, KPBS Environment reporter Ed Joyce introduces us to one San Diegan who decided to get an energy audit of her home.
It's not exactly a makeover of this old house, but this not-so-old house has some outdated and inefficient energy systems and appliances. So Erin Cooley opted for a home energy audit for her modest Del Cerro home with San Diego contractor Christian Asdal of GGR Energy.
Just kind of walk me through your house, your energy. Tell me a little bit about your experience here, other hot and cold rooms, etc. Things that concern you.
Okay, this is a house that was built in this neighborhood in 1964-65. We don't have air conditioning, which is a big issue out here because it can get pretty hot. We lived with that for several years before installing a ceiling fan between the floors. We're on a tri-level.
Asdal and his assistant inspect the outside
and then like holes like this
and inside of the house.
All of that black is air leakage.
Then they do a variety of tests using specialized tools to measure energy loss from doors, windows, walls, and vents. The tests also measure the efficiency of appliances.
We'll look at this appliance, and what year did you get this?
99.
Yeah, so most likely you can replace this right now and it'll pay for itself.
Even though that's an Energy Star.
Even though it's
the
Energy Star.
Energy Stars?
Over 10 years old of refrigerators, the improvements in efficiency has been dramatic in the past 10 years.
Cooley says she became concerned when her utility bills for her 2,200 square foot home started increasing.
Our bills went up to $300 a month for two people using minimal electricity. We were extremely concerned.
Several weeks after the inspection, Cooley received a comprehensive energy report. The audit recommended upgrades and changes throughout the home. Cooley says the report shows old appliances account for more than half of her monthly energy costs.
Things like duct leakage and insulation are around 26 to 34% of our energy bill. Wall insulation's about 24%. Air leakage about 20%. So it's a nice assessment of where we're wasting energy, or what we're paying for that's just going out the door.
But when she looked at the cost of doing all the recommended changes and upgrades, Cooley found the money she'd have to spend was too much for too little savings on her utility bills.
The numbers just don't seem to work for us. Now, if this were a bigger household, we're just a two-person household, we use what we think is minimal energy. If this were a family, lots of people in and out of the house, lots of showers, washing machines, dishwashers, a lot of cooking, this might be a really valuable tool to achieve substantial savings. 25–26% for us isn't substantial.
Cooley says spending money now during a time of economic uncertainty is something she has to think about, but she does plan to consider upgrading some appliances and adding attic insulation, giving her a little bang or slightly lower bills for fewer bucks.
That was KPBS Environment reporter Ed Joyce. For more information about energy-saving rebates for homeowners, go to their website at energycenter.org. And in the interest of full disclosure, the California Center for Sustainable Energy is also an underwriter of KPBS.
When we come back, your thoughts about cuts to Medi-Cal payments for doctors.
Plus, a recap of tonight's top stories in a moment on KPBS Evening Edition.
Hi, I'm Elsa Sevilla. If you find yourself hearing about a great program on KPBS after it's already aired, we have a solution. Get notified about your favorite TV programs on KPBS before they air by subscribing to the TV Highlights email alert. This daily email will feature the best programs coming up right here on KPBS TV, so you can make a date to tune in or plan to record it. It's easy to register. Just go to kpbs.org/alerts.
Tuesday at 10 on KPBS.
Welcome back to the Public Square on KPBS Evening Edition. Yesterday, we asked what you think is a fair way to set rates for Medi-Cal payments to doctors. A San Diego doctor wants the right to sue the state of California over reducing Medi-Cal payments. Joseph Hoffman says the California Insurance Commissioner should determine rates, just as the State Utilities Commission rules on rates for electric and gas. We'll keep you updated on whether the U.S. Supreme Court decides Dr. Ted Mazur can move forward with his lawsuit. And now a follow-up on our story yesterday about prison realignment. We reported 4,000 new inmates considered nonviolent will now be transferred to the county's jurisdiction. A report by the Associated Press says not so fast on the nonviolent description. According to its review, the inmates' convictions can include involuntary manslaughter, statutory rape, assault, and battery, among others. You can read more on the realignment on our website, kpbs.org. Well, tomorrow I'll be interviewing former San Diego Mayor Dick Murphy. What would you like to ask him? Send me an email at news@kpbs.org, or you can follow us on Twitter or like us on Facebook. I'd love to hear from you.
Recapping tonight's top stories, the Highway Patrol says it has detained a person of interest in connection with a string of shootings on San Diego freeways. So far, they are not calling the man a suspect. San Diego State University will soon offer a degree in lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender studies. It is the first university to do so on the West Coast. And San Diego Gas and Electric has been given the go-ahead to once again use construction helicopters on the Sunrise Powerlink project. The choppers had been grounded because of safety concerns. You can watch and comment on any of the stories you saw tonight on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition.
The Weather Service says we're in for some strong winds, rain, and even snow in the mountains in the next few days. We leave you with a look at the forecast. Have a great evening.
Good night.